Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Hilaal Live. My name is Faraz Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us, and of course, my colleague Luqman Shadrack for taking you through that first part of the show. We are back to regular programming here on Hilaal TV. Now, this weekend, the ANC held its 2024 January the 8th statement at the Umbombela Stadium in Nelspruit, and President Cyril Ramaphosa was confident that the ruling party would be able to achieve a majority victory at this year's polls. This comes as this year's elections will be fiercely contested, with the chance of a potential national coalition government on the cards. Joining me to unpack what happened this weekend and looking ahead, I'd like to welcome political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe. Prof. Seepe, good day. Thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Good day, and thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Prof. Seepe, I think every ANC leader always has that same song and tale which they give at every January the 8th statement. To a certain extent, this weekend's one was similar, with a little bit of a bite at the opposition parties from President Cyril Ramaphosa. Were you impressed by what he said this weekend?
As you rightfully indicated, the general statement follows a particular template. And among those is also an opportunity for the ruling party to try to win confidence of its members and also of South Africans. But we need to understand that things have changed drastically. One of the amazing things about the input by Ramaphosa was to emphasize the ANC's performance over the last 30 years. And the emphasis on 30 years was deliberate, because he knows that he's got nothing to show in terms of his administration in the last 5 years. So knowing full well that his administration has been disastrous, he decided to cast the net wider. But even then, people could argue that even the things that he claims, he talked about the issue of South Africa being better. And people will agree that, yes, we have electricity installations, but they will also tell you that since he took over, he brought back the rolling blackouts. And the effect of those blackouts was to undermine the economy, and was also to impact negatively on South Africa's livelihoods. The households have suffered, business has suffered. He also talked about the infrastructure, roads, but what he did not tell people is that those roads are now full of potholes. He didn't tell us about the collapse of the economic infrastructure. He talked about health, but he didn't tell us that the facilities like hospitals have become, and clinics have become dysfunctional. And one must understand that that was also an element of desperation on his part. He also added 2 days before that people need to vote for the ANC, because if they don't vote for the ANC, the student funding, NSFAS, will also cease to exist, which was a lie. He also told people that the social grants will cease to exist, which is also a lie. So what we have here is a lying president, and who is very desperate, and who's also very aware that since he took over, the decline of the ANC support has precipitously declined. One must also understand that the ANC's performance in 2019 was poor, and that was before Phala Phala. And the ANC's performance in 2021 local elections was also a wake-up call when the ANC lost the major metros in Gauteng and across the country. So this is not a party that is ready to go, that shows that it is growing, that there's confidence. So you found the president who is talking all over. He talked about corruption and did not mention the collusion of the banks in currency manipulation. Neither did he mention Phala Phala. Even when he talked about state capture, he did not actually tell the audience that if there's any state capture, it has been proven to have happened under him. First, you have had the all organs that are supposed to investigate him on Phala Phala, all of them ducking and diving, and he claimed that there is due process. Suddenly, the police are no longer able to investigate, and there's also a disappearance of the so-called civil society organizations that they had been keen to hold President Zuma to account. I mean, we used to have the right to know. Suddenly, we now live in a world where there is a right not to know. I mean, the investigation around Palapala has been embarrassing, and yet parliamentary panel led by a former chief justice and a senior judge and a senior counsel came out to say the president may have a case to answer and a case on a number of areas. One, there are constitutional violations, and there are also possible criminality in terms of money laundering, in terms of the failure to report a crime, in terms of a conflict of interest, where a president of another country had to become involved in a matter that involves the private affairs of South Africa's president. The president of Namibia had to answer those questions. All these things, he conveniently pretended that they don't exist. But as we go towards elections, we can rest assured that Palapala is going to play itself in the courts. But the ANC may have protected him in parliament, but it may not be able to protect him when it comes to the voters.
Prof. Seepe, nostalgia is something that I think a lot of South Africans hold on to, especially at the dawn of democracy. But I think many of them think of the here and now, and the here and now does not paint a really positive picture for South Africa in terms of socially, economically, and so forth. Is that something that the ANC should be concerned of with regards to that?
Well, the ANC is no longer concerned about anything except being in power. This is why it always goes around lying. That's why it relies on the history. But the people don't eat ideas. They don't eat history. People are going to vote on their material experience. That what does it say about the possibility of my child getting a job? What we've seen is the number of the unemployed increasing. We have young people who have now become unemployable. And when you have that, you have a powder keg. And this is what he's not addressing, that under his watch, South Africa has become what they call a global poster child of inequality. And this is why he spends more time in dealing with public relations exercises. This is a president who got very excited and had people take pictures of him fixing a pothole. I mean, that actually sums up Ramaphosa's presidency. If you could have a president who could be so excited about a little thing like that. But that little thing is a reality of South Africans who have to drive on a daily basis on those potholes. That reality is a reality of South Africans who every day they are faced with grinding poverty. This is the ANC that no longer cares except about being in power. But on the flip side of it, in as much as he pretends to be bullish, it's also the ANC that is already talking about which coalition partners it must have. And that indicates that some in the ANC have come to a realization that the possibility of the voters being generous as they've been in the past, that time is over. So Ramaphosa was rambling. That's why he spoke for such a long period. And all he said was an infinite deal of nothing.
Prof. Seepe, I want to shift the attention to the former President Jacob Zuma. Now, of course, there's the new party that has been formed, the MK party, and one would have thought, okay, it's just another party, very similar to what Ace Magashule, the former Secretary General, formed. There seems to be a bit of momentum gathering. Now, I'm going to talk about just this past weekend. I saw maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 people wearing the T-shirts. I saw many minibus taxis carrying flags of it. Not a large number, but quite a significant number. And I know that the KZN province holds quite a stronghold with regards to Zuma and his support. Do you think the ANC is concerned about the potential growing numbers of this party?
The ANC is very concerned, and this is why the leaders of the ANC, all of them, had to make some comment from the Secretary General of the ANC to the chairperson, to the president, to the deputy president. And that is an expression of concern. But they do not know how to deal with it. One, the Secretary General of the ANC indicated that the posture taken by Jacob Zuma simply means that he had already expired himself. And normally that would have been easy if you are a party that has no constitution. But the posture taken by the former president is clearly in violation of the ANC's constitution. It is defined in the constitution as misconduct. And when you have somebody who is guilty of misconduct, you subject that person to a process. But the ANC has been unwilling to move with haste on that matter. And there's a reason why that is so. Because if you subject him into a process where he has to account, then you have to give him a real hearing on the very issues that of concern that he had raised. And those might actually implicate the president of the ANC to also be guilty of certain constitutional stipulation of the very constitution. So that is a very slippery road. So it is better for you to say, as Mantashe says, that he has defined himself outside the ANC. But then what cannot be denied is that President Zuma, in terms of the ANC constitution, has a case to answer. But the same applies to President Ramaphosa. And to start putting them through that, it will become a challenge to the ANC. But be that as it may, the mere suggestion by President Zuma to simply saying, we're talking about the ANC of Ramaphosa. He has already painted this ANC as an ANC that has been bought. This is why this ANC has not even paid attention to the resolutions of the ANC on a number of issues. Instead, as the opposition people have actually said, they say things may not have been that rosy under Jacob Zuma, but they become disastrous under Ramaphosa. People have actually said that he has actually reversed all the gains. Now the ANC goes into elections with high unemployment, with a sense of hopelessness, with load shedding. And one must remember that when the ANC lost in 2019, it blamed that on load shedding. Load shedding is back, but it comes back with a bang. But on top of that, you also have Palapala. Ramaphosa can no longer stand on the pulpit and in the pedestal of morality. He is as guilty as hell, and he can duck and dive, and the ANC can protect him and rally behind him, but the voters are not that stupid. In the same way that they were not stupid in 2019, in 2021, now the ANC has got his back against the wall. So with that, it gives a certain form of life to MK. This is why that you've seen a lot of activities in Gauteng, in Mpumalanga, in the Free State, and as well in KZN. So it is correct for the ANC to worry about that.
Prof. Seepe, thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
That's Professor Sipho Seepe, political analyst. Yeah, the countdown to those elections have officially started. Of course, January the 8th is just one out of many of these political party functions that you will be seeing leading up to the day, which is yet to be announced for this year's elections. Do stay tuned to Hilaal Live. We'll be back after this break.